I don't think I have to decide if I want coffee or trucking because they both complement very well.
Thought we could just start by going back to where you started, which was when you left Puerto Rico and came to the US.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you said that was it after Hurricane Maria?
Yeah,
Is that
correct.
right? And was it due to destruction from the hurricane that you had to leave?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in the island of Puerto Rico, and I'm originally from Caguas. At that time, I just graduated college and I tried to find a job, but of course, it was very hard to find a job when the whole island has been destroyed. And I felt the responsibility to help my family out. And I was like, you know what? Let me just go out. So I came to United States. I didn't have any family members in Washington, D.C. is where I went to. I stayed in Maryland, worked in Washington, D.C. I came only with $500 and good luck. And I was terrified. I'm not gonna lie, I was terrified. Um, and my education is in nursing, so I did work as a nurse for a little bit. But uh, my passion is in coffee. That's really where my heart is at. And when I started working in coffee, I really fell in love with the industry to the point that I wanted to learn even more. So after working in a specialty coffee shop in Washington, D.C. for a year, I decided to go to Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an experience that really opened my mind, my eyes, my heart, everything. And I wanted to keep learning. So when I came back to US, there was a coffee event. And because I was like new to the industry, I was a little shy. I didn't know if I should go to this like coffee competition. And it was my first local one. And I won. And I was like, this is so weird, but okay. So the next month, there was another coffee event, and they posted my picture on the social media. And one of the people that were there recognized me, and he approached me and he said, "You're Natasha?" And I was like, "Yes." And he was like, "Hey, I see you on social media. Would you like to come over for a coffee class that I'm gonna give?" And I was like, "Let's do it." So that warehouse was in Rockville, Maryland. So I decided to go to a coffee class and I loved it. And it's a huge roastery and they had trucks coming in. And I was like, okay, this business is huge. So he at that time he needed to go for a coffee competition. He's my mentor, he's my friend, he's a coffee roaster, and he was gonna compete in that year. And he asked me if I wanted to cover him for 2 days. And from working 2 days, I ended up working in that company for 2 years, which is awesome. And working at that company, I was able to learn everything related to the whole coffee supply chain. So, I learned um like first coffee, the most important part I will say is like taking care of the soil, so taking care of the coffee farm. So they sent me to Guatemala, and it was my first time going to other place other than to a coffee farm other than one in Puerto Rico. So I went to Guatemala. Saw all the process from the coffee before it gets exported to the United States, and there's a lot of hands, a lot of things involved. But then when it gets to the United States, it's a whole different process. And that's where trucking comes in place. And I think nobody that I met before has like really sit down to think about the role of trucking in coffee. And at that time, I didn't even know until I started like observing how everything works. And I remember, and I have this experience to my heart, I received a truck driver. He was so tired. And again, I was ignorant at that time. I didn't know how hard we work, as I include me now in this field. And he asked me if he could use the restroom. And I said, yeah. And to me, that question was like sad because it's a basic thing, human thing to do. A real quick parenthesis. Now I understand why he asked, because when I became a driver, a lot of people don't let me use their restrooms. And I was like, that's crazy. Like we hit the road for hours and hours. Sometimes we can stop. So, you know, I didn't understand what I did for him at that time, how meaningful it was until I became a trucker. So I was like, yeah, sure, use the restroom. And then when he used the restroom, I was making him coffee. And I got a coffee bag, I got a t-shirt, I got a mug, I got a box, I put a lot of goodies, and I gave him a tour of the facility. And he needed to wait a little bit for being loaded. And at that time, I didn't know the frustration that a trucker goes through when they have to wait for being loaded, especially when they're tired. And the truth is, when you're getting loaded, you feel it in the truck unless you disconnect. So anyways, I took care of him. I gave him a tour, all these things, and he was so grateful. But again, I didn't understand why he was so grateful at that time. And I used to be the person that will receive truckers in that warehouse, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, come back, and I didn't know. So it was a pretty cool experience. But then the pandemic started, and primarily my job was to go to different Costco's on the East Coast, Northeast, the United States. So I was never used to be in the same place all the time. And that's when I really started learning more about the whole process, about everything. And at that time we had a driver, it was a box truck, so you don't need a CDL for a box truck. And I told him, what if we get our CDLs? And he was like, are you sure? And I'm like, I mean, yes, because I really like to see another woman in the trucks because I used to be the one receiving them. I never saw any female drivers. And I personally believe that you need to be the change that you want to see. It's very easy to say, I want this to happen, but are you really to roll your sleeves and get the hands dirty and get into that? So I decided to take on that. But at that time I was married and I was going through a divorce, so I couldn't do it. And at that time I also had to go back home for medical issues. So I was like, you know what? Right now is not the time. And I don't think it's correct to force things. I think everything comes whenever you're ready. So I did that. So I decided to go back home, but I still had that thing inside my heart that I wanted to be a driver. So going back home, I also met the coffee farmers that I currently work with. So I went back home with a lot of coffee magazines from all these events I was already going in the United States. And I found these women and I was like, you know what? I would love to work with them one day. And I even had the name of the company at that time. I had like the little logo, but I didn't have quite sure what I wanted to do exactly. I just knew I wanted to have a coffee business someday. So being in Puerto Rico, had my surgery, I came back to the United States and I didn't want to go back to Maryland because first it's too cold and I don't do well with the cold. I love Arizona. A lot of people are like, you're crazy. It's too hot. I love it. Um, and I wanted to try something new. So I decided to come here. My friend will say, well, come here, try it out. I tried to work in different coffee businesses. Uh, but most of the positions that they were offering me were working as a barista. And in order to advance in my career, I knew I couldn't be working just behind the bar. I needed to do something else because I was doing quality control, because I was understanding the supply chain, I was going to the farmers, I was doing other things that complement the whole aspect of the coffee supply chain. And I wanted to be a truck driver. So I was like, you know what? This is my time. This is my sign to be a truck driver. So I went to different schools and they told me about a grant. And I don't know if many people know about it, but as the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act is a grant that most of states have it and they pay for your school. So it took around 4 to 5 months to get the whole process put in place and they paid for my school. So I got to trucking school. It was only 3 women in my class of like 30 something men. And it can be intimidating, right? And I feel like my advice to women when they ask me, hey, how you did it, it's like you gotta work on yourself. You gotta be confident. You gotta believe that you can do it because some people will try to take you down. And if you let that get into you, it can either like make you even quit from trucking school. So I knew who I was. I knew what I wanted to get done. So it was challenging, but it was good. I finished trucking school. I got my first job. I started in a mega carrier, and it was a class of 20, but 19 were men. So I find the same, challenge again of being the only woman. I was like, you know what? It's okay. I got this. And when I started going over the road and I tasted coffee, I was like, oh Lord, what? The coffee was bad. The coffee simply was bad. And I was thinking to myself, truck drivers move United States. Without drivers, there's nothing. No goods, no food, no nothing. How come the only time you have to feel normal and to feel human again and to reconnect and to, get up, it is a bad cup of coffee and everything clicked. That's why the first bag that I have is called Over the Road. It's because I started working over the road. Most drivers start working over the road, and it's a cup of coffee that is so good and so sweet that you can drink it more than once. I feel like coffee should not be just to wake up. That was something in the past. When you go through the coffee history, we have three different waves. And one of the first waves is basically people drinking coffee just to wake up. The second wave is people experimenting with sweet, like caramel and chocolate and all these flavors. And the third wave is specialty coffee. That's what I do, which means it's a coffee that's higher quality. And I believe that people should enjoy that coffee just because it tastes good other than to just wake up. Another thing I noticed with drivers was um, the coffee was very bitter. So you're driving, you drink your coffee, and then you get a heartburn. And I felt that myself because might run out of my coffee. So I was like, I don't want to feel this way. So I had planned to do this year during summer, but that's when the injury happened. I was getting ready to go to work. I was moving stuff around in my house. Honestly, I will tell everybody, learn how to move boxes and be careful because the only thing that took me was a box to misplace my foot in the wrong way, and my knee got twisted and I tore my ACL. Uh, all my savings were gone during that time. So it was very frustrating because I saved money to start my business and I had to prioritize my health because I had to. And I thought about not moving forward with it. I was like, this is it. I can't do it. It makes no sense. I can walk. I can work. I need to get surgery. I don't know how long it's going to take. Since the injury has been now 6 months, I still cannot walk properly. But my friends, I had great friends. They were like, no, Natasha, you're not going to quit. You're going to do it. My friends got me the coffee roaster. My friends like helped me financially to be able to have the funds to purchase the equipment that I needed. And I've been able to roast at home. And I have to do it sitting down. That's the only way, you know. And I'm happy that I have that support system. And I can say that during this time to anybody, but especially a driver, that we depend 100% on our bodies to do our job. You have to save money. I was able to save 30% of my salary when I became a driver. And saving that 30% is what has allowed me to survive 6 months without working. I'm not getting any social security, any disability. I was a 1099, worker, so I don't have any benefits like that. And I feel like that's very important and something that everybody needs to consider, have a plan B. So I don't want to say that thanks to the injury, this is possible, but before I didn't have time. Now I have the time. And I decided to use this time wisely because frustration got into me. And I'm not gonna say that I never got frustrated or depressed. I got in a really bad depression. I don't have family members here with me. I had to push through it with only 2 friends here in the state of Arizona, and it's hard. But I knew that this was something I wanted to get done. And with the right support system, with the right friends, and with the right mindset, it's possible to do it. The only thing I can say is you have to believe yourself. And once you believe yourself and you think that you deserve what you believe, then things are going to be easier. So this is my story. This is everything I've been going through. Um, I've been working in coffee for over 5 years, and I don't think I have to decide if I want coffee or trucking because they both complement very well. I love what I do. I can't wait to get back in the truck. But in the meantime, I'm hoping to share my story, have people try my coffee. And something, a side note, a lot of drivers will drink coffee with a lot of sugar. And we know that that can contribute to health problems. So I'm super happy to know that a lot of people have been able to drink my coffee and they either stop putting sugar or they put a little bit less or they drink it black or they don't put too much milk. And why that matters to me? Because our job in the road is hard. Every truck driver understands this feeling. And sometimes we put ourselves through unhealthy, you know, drinks or foods just because it's the options that we have. And I know I cannot change the whole country, but if I can provide an option that I drink myself, that another driver can drink and feel good about it, that's something that I take pride in. Unfortunately, there's a lot of businesses that they make products for drivers, but they're not drivers themselves. And I think that is beautiful when somebody that has lived through everything that happens in the road makes a product thinking about the well-being of other people. So I take pride on that, and I'm gonna show it to you. This is the bag. It's matching
Oh,
with
it's
the shirt.
beautiful.
And so let me put it closer. It's a red truck because it's the truck that I drove the most. It's a Kenworth T680.
Okay.
So I'm making like an homage to myself, but also to the drivers. And I don't know if you've been to the West Coast, but if you ever drove through the Hoover Dam, that's what
I
you're looking
have. Okay. Yeah,
at.
that's
So I
really
got
cool.
inspired by the Hoover Dam.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. Wow. So yeah, that's a whole lot. Um, I think what I found most interesting about your story is that you do have these dual passions. And just to
Yeah.
step back a little bit, um, when you first decided you wanted to go into trucking, were you thinking that you had to choose? Were you thinking, okay, I love coffee, but I'm going to set that aside and, um, you know, just do this new
So
thing?
the reason to go to trucking, honestly, it was just to see if I could do it.
Mhm.
Because when I worked in the warehouse, I will receive all these truckers, but I never receive a women. And I was like, that's interesting. And then research shows that only 12% of women, well, that truck drivers are women in the United States. And I was like, I want to be part of that 12%. But then when I came to Arizona and tried to get into coffee and I noticed how the coffee scenery was here, I was like, maybe this is my time to do the trucking. And then I believe that if it wasn't for trucking, my business would not have any sense.
Mhm.
It wouldn't have any purpose. And I believe that nobody needs to choose between one or the other. If you can think in a good, creative way to mix them both, that's beautiful. And that's what I did.
Yeah, you've definitely done that. And as far as your trucking career, I believe you said you started, was it June of 2023 or March 2023?
Yeah.
You
I'm still
started,
a baby in the industry. It started last year.
yeah. And what exactly were you doing when you were driving?
Sure. So I started with Schneider. That was my first trucking job. And then one of my classmates from trucking school, she was working in another company. It's a smaller fleet of like 30 trucks or so. And she was like, hey, you want to come over here? You will have more home time. And I was like, sure, because I already had the idea to have the business. So being at home more time will be good for me. So I said yes. And we were contractors moving Amazon trailers. So that's what I was doing, moving Amazon trailers.
Mhm. And so was trucking kind of, did it turn out to be like you envisioned it would be when you first were thinking, hey, I want to give this a try? Or
Yes.
was there very much that was different
So I
than you
think I'm
expected?
one of the very few people that I knew what I was getting myself into. One of my very good friends, Nelson, and he's watching this. I say hi to him and I love him with all my heart. Nelson is a truck driver. We come from the same background. I'm a nurse, well, former nurse. He's also a nurse, and we're both truck drivers. He has been driving over 10 years, and he loves the road. And he was the one who told me how everything is related to trucking. Like, if this happens, this is what you're gonna, this is how you're gonna resolve it. Don't have this high expectation about this. It won't happen. He was the one who had my eyes open before I got into it. And I think that everybody that would like to be a driver, is, in my opinion, is vital to have somebody that works in the industry that can tell you exactly how it is. I'm not gonna tell you that backing up at first was easy. I will be lying. But I can say that it's normal, that is hard, that is normal, that is gonna take time. That is normal that you have to understand what truck you're using, you know, the distance of the fifth wheel, or you know, if you have all your tandems completely to the back or to the front, if you're at some point for a very short time. I drove a flatbed, and that's a whole different story. So I think having somebody that can tell you how it is, it will not eliminate, but minimize the frustrations that you may have. So everything that I lived is exactly how he described it to me. And I think that that was the best thing that could happen to me.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm sure that was really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And so were you driving mainly regionally, or were you going like all over?
So I started over the road,
Hmm.
and then when I moved into Amazon, my company will have us do over the road, but then the owner decided that he wanted to have everybody doing solo, so I switched to regional. So I will just stay on the West Coast mostly. But whenever he will find a good opportunity to go over the road, then I will be go over the road. So I will say over the road and regional kind of thing.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you said you're really looking forward to getting back to it when you can, but obviously you have your business that's keeping you busy now. Do you envision being able to balance both pretty easily, or what do you think that'll be like when you're all
So
healed and
I
everything?
already thought about it. I
Hmm.
think that for me going back is very important. That's my primary source of income, and trying to have a business without, you know, funding it is very hard. So I definitely want to go back. I have some coffee people, you know, just to put a name, that they have a bigger roaster than I do, and I already had conversations with them. And whenever I need to process a big order, I can always go roast the orders, package everything, and send it out. But I do have somebody here that if I need to hire them to process the orders, I can do that. And that's something that I'm really looking forward to. Once I get back in the truck, I will need to have somebody that can be here, that I can trust, and that can provide the same, you know, the same way I package an order, I'm expecting that or better. So
Sure.
that's gonna happen,
Yeah.
hopefully sooner than later.
And for like people like me who don't necessarily know a lot about coffee, like what exactly is going into creating the blend that you make?
So I don't have a blend for right now. So this
Okay.
coffee, um, it's a single origin. This coffee is from Mexico. It's from Tenango de Doria. And I'm hoping eventually, when, you know, little by little, I want to first educate people about what coffee is. Surprisingly, a lot of people don't know coffee is a fruit and grows in
Hmm.
tropical areas. It's not grown in the United States, only Hawaii, but because Hawaii is a different island. So I'm hoping to educate people little by little. And that has been amazing because a lot of people tell me, oh, maybe that's why that coffee was so bitter, is because I was drinking a different coffee species. I only work with Arabica coffee beans at the moment, and that bean is more delicate. It needs shade, it needs nutrients, it needs more care. It takes a long time for these cherries to pop up. So basically what we drink is the seed of the cherry. So I'm hoping to educate people to understand what's behind of it. And so far, I had truck drivers try my coffee and they were confused. They will look at the coffee and look at me and be like, why this coffee is so sweet? And I'm like, well, because it was properly worked at a farm level. So I'm very happy to be working with a women's group. They're called Las Adelitas. Um, and that's all they do. They process amazing coffees. I know them for the last 3 years. And what is beautiful about working with them is at the time I was gonna have September is the month of surgeries for me. So 3 years ago during September, I had a surgery. And even though I didn't have necessarily any business idea or plan, whatever, I knew I wanted to work with them. And they said yes. 3 years later, I reach out. I'm like, hey, I'm ready to buy that coffee. And they were like, really? I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to buy that coffee. So I think educating people little by little how the supply chain is and how it looks like, and how also we are part of that, because the coffee doesn't come here walking. We need truckers that can move that product to the United States. And that mix of supply chain, trucking, coffee, I just love it.
If you could kind of elaborate on how that connection between coffee makers and truck drivers, how that plays out in your business or in your
Oh,
marketing.
okay. So the business I worked out in Maryland, I will always be very grateful to them because I think if it wasn't for that company, I wouldn't have half of the knowledge that I have of the industry right now. And the mission of that company is to make business directly with the coffee farmers. Why? Because there's a lot of people in between. You have importers, exporters, you have, people from the, how you call it, the stock market deciding on coffee prices. So that's called the C market. So if you think about spot market for trucking, we have the C market for coffee. So a frustration that I see in trucking is drivers saying, well, brokers don't want to pay what my, operational cost might be. And coffee is exactly the same. Some importers don't want to pay coffee farmers the cost of production of their coffee. So when I see those problems from different industries but very similar, I said to myself, I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to be part of feeling like somebody's not being valued along the supply chain. And for that reason, I was like, okay, you know what? First, I do believe that drivers deserve better everything, period. Better truck stops, safe parking. I mean, you work in Landline, you know the truck parking crisis. We deserve good food, good coffee, all these good things. However, the people that provide these services had never drove a truck before. And talking about coffee, you have a lot of people having coffee businesses, having amazing coffee shops, coffee roasteries, but they never picked up a coffee cherry. And I have. I got, I fell down a hill in a coffee farm. I got the fire ants all, in my face. It took me 3 hours to only being able to pick up 10 pounds of coffee that turned out to be completely dried out. They look like this. This is called green coffee. It's raw coffee. 10 pounds of cherries into 3 pounds of green coffee. So you see there's a lot of time and hands involved. And I was like, you know what? If I want to see something different, I need to make it different. If I want better coffee for drivers, then I have to make sure that I'm working with farms that are doing the great thing that they can in their farms and don't negotiate the prices because I already know how it feels to be working in a farm. Whatever I pay them is something that makes me feel good because I'm contributing to them having a livelihood out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Same with drivers. When you pay a driver very little for whatever job they, whatever they're hauling, you got to think, can they live off that? And if the answer is no, then we need to do something different. That's why the mission of Nakrusan is to honor the work of those who grow coffee and those who move the world, coffee farmers and truck drivers.
Yeah, that really is interesting that you've been in every position basically along that
Yeah.
supply chain. That's a very unique thing.
Yeah, and I haven't found anybody that has done that, and I will love to because I think too much. And you know what is a Venn diagram, like the two circles going together? That's how my brain works. I had two different industries and I put them together, and I'm always like looking at the similarities. And finding that out was very fascinating, but at the same time, it was sad because I know I have the power to make it different, and that's what I want to do.
Mhm. And so do you have any specific plans for the business going forward? Obviously, you have the one product that you sell now. Are you planning to expand the
Yes.
line of what you're selling?
So as of right now, yes, I started out with the over the road. Now I have it available in 2 pound bags because a lot of people were like, the coffee's so good. I ran out of it fast. So I was like, okay, let me have a bigger size. I'm also working on something. It's like a little filter that you put on top of the mug. The only thing you need to do is add hot water. And that's amazing for people like us that are truck drivers because we don't want to deal with the mess. I myself tried the French press in the truck, a mess. Don't recommend. So I'm thinking about ways of having good coffee that you can make it 30 minutes or less if you are taking your 30-minute break in the truck. So there's that. I'm waiting for the harvest time in a farm in Puerto Rico because I am from Puerto Rico. Of course, I want to have coffee from my country, but because Puerto Rico is a small island, we don't produce so much. So I'm waiting for harvest season to come and see if I can have the coffee how I have envisioned it. And I'm also currently working on having merch. It's gonna be pretty cool. I cannot say details right now, but it's gonna be super cool and super different. And one of the other goals I have, other than selling online, is going to be able to have wholesale accounts. So I'm like putting myself out there. It's hard because I can't walk fully. I look like a little penguin walking and I have a lot of pain. So whenever I have the energy and the strength to go out to a truck stop or a trucking related business, I go show coffee samples and start the process of like putting myself out there. So those are the plans for now.
Okay, well, that's quite a bit. Um, yeah, you definitely have big dreams, I can tell.
Yes.
And so I know you're on, is it just Instagram on social media and then your website?
Yeah.
And you want to share what those are if people want
Sure.
to?
So, as a fun fact, the name of the company is my full name. So, my full name is Natasha Cruz-Sanchez. And since I was a little girl, I love playing with words and all that. So, it's Na Cruzan. So, I don't know if you can see it here. Na Cruzan. And also on my shirt. So, Natasha Cruz-Sanchez. That's the name of it.
So
And you can just put
nacrusan.com.
nacruzam.com. It's going to take you directly to the website, or if you put it on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok, it will come up just like that. I want to say thank you for the opportunity. And I also want to say that thank you to Marty Ellis because I had the chance to meet him when he was here in Arizona before my injury. And he gave me this cup, and I'm very happy because
Aw.
this is the cup that I take everywhere I go. I feel like everybody should know what the OOIDA does, and Marty definitely is the person that is in charge of that. So I knew about the organization because of a billboard. And then when I saw that you guys were gonna be in Arizona, I just drove straight to the truck stop at Marty and met Marty. So I want to say hi to him and thank you, and that whatever you are doing, keep doing it because a lot of people need to know that we have an organization fighting for truckers.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to have truckers fighting for truckers, nobody else other than ourselves.
Hey, thanks for watching. To stay up to date on the latest in trucking news, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to be notified of new videos when they come out each week.